everybody. It's Bev coming to you from Hamtopia. It is April the 13th, Monday. Another week has gone by. I don't even know what damn day it is unless I look at the damn computer now because they're all bleeding together. Alright, well, let's go on with the Reaper and the Scribe, chapter 23. And thank you for coming. In the 21st century, Alice Winters Chambers' travels had come to an end. A successful 2 weeks had ensued, and many deals had been struck with estate agents and builders alike. Alice had learned that the way to get things that she wanted was to treat people with respect and see both sides of the deal. She was, in fact, poles apart from the hard creature that she once was. The train journey back from London to Leeds could have been a lot more comfortable had she traveled first class, but Alice Winters Chambers never placed comfort before efficiency. She would not expect her employees to waste money on trivial things, so she led by example. Waiting at the station was a tall, thin man who was obviously very pleased to see Alice arriving. Alice ran into Freddy's arms. "I have missed you so much, Freddy. Are you as glad to see me as I am to see you?" "You know I am. That was the longest 2 weeks I can remember." "Well, of course it was. You had to do proper work and not play on your train set with my brother." "I will have you know that your office was running very smoothly in your absence." "How wonderful! I just might take myself a holiday for the month in that case," said Alice with a giggle. "Hold on, girl, it didn't run that well," laughed Freddy. Freddy relieved Alice of her suitcase, and she linked her arm into his as they both walked to the car park. On the journey back to the office, Freddy explained to Alice how well Laura Dinsdale had settled in, and that her home office was in place and all set up, ready to go. "Oh, yes, Laura Dinsdale, someone we both know well, was asking of her whereabouts." "I only know one person we both know well," said a confused Freddy Chambers. "Yes, you really need to get out more, Freddy. Jamie was asking if we knew her whereabouts." "I wasn't aware he knew who Laura was." "He didn't, but it sounds like he has been traveling through whirlwinds again and has met her on his travels." "The little hypocrite! After all that he put me through after I met you when you came to this century." "Wait until I see him," said Freddy, a hint of revenge in his eye. Alice just laughed and said, "Have you any idea how ridiculous that last sentence sounded? We will have to be careful talking like that." "I suppose you are right. Did you give him her details?" "Yes, I passed on her phone number." I wonder how he will open a conversation with her," laughed Alice. The car filled with laughter as they pulled into the parking space of the largest logistics company in Great Britain. Jamie Winters sat drinking a mug of tea and staring at his steam locomotive, the very locomotive that was probably partly built by the man he'd pretended to be when he journeyed back to 1849. The locomotive was certainly from that era, and how things had turned out, it was well within the imagination that his very own engine had been built by his very own ancestor. Jamie was pondering time itself and how you could travel back to it. Then he realized, of course, that his journey back also meant you could travel forward in time as the two Victorian siblings did. Did this mean that time doesn't exist? That, as he was sat there restoring his engine, in a parallel time, his ancestor John Winters was actually building the engine? And what of meeting somebody on your travels? How does that work? Freddy had met and fallen in love with Alice, the Alice who lived, worked, and died in Victorian times. Yet on his return to the 21st century, he met her again. The obvious answer in Jamie's mind was the reincarnation of the soul. But how does that work if all time is happening at the same time? Clearly that wasn't the case, and time travel was only made possible by what scientists and science fiction writers call wormholes. Jamie managed to confuse himself more by thinking back to his meeting with Laura Dinsdale in the 16th century. If Freddy met Alice again through reincarnation, how come when Jamie traveled from the 16th to the 17th century, he didn't bump into Laura again? In the 17th century, he met her natural progression, her grandson, as you would expect, but no granddaughter bearing her likeness, remembering their first meeting, as it was with Freddy and Alice. Jamie's head was about to explode when, just in time, the 7th Cavalry burst over the hill to save the day. The door had swung open, and silhouetted in the burst of light that flowed through was a tall, thin man who looked like he had something to say. "Freddy! Just the man I want to see! You will never guess what I've been doing." "Never mind that. I have a bone to pick with you. Whatever that is, it can wait. Now grab some tea and sit down. We have things to discuss," said Jamie, as he cleared a place for Freddy to sit down. "Now, I want you to listen, because there is something that I'm trying to work out." "What's that, then?" "The relativity of time." Freddy looked behind himself and was clearly checking all around the room. "Who are you looking for?" said a confused Jamie. "I just wondered if Einstein had walked in. You do realize that it's me you're talking to. You know more about time than Einstein. Although you haven't traveled in time, you have certainly steered it in a direction to satisfy your needs." "Would you just listen to this? You've got more front than Brighton. Jamie Winters, the man who went back in time and altered his family's history to make him a rich man." "You know that is not what I did intentionally, and you're missing the point." "How am I missing the point? That's what happened. Anyway, let's just say that you accidentally made yourself rich and quite by chance managed to get the blueprints for the engine that you are rebuilding in the 21st century from the man who actually drew them in the 19th century, then innocently placed them behind a brick in the wall so you could retrieve them 150 years later. That aside, you want to tell me how you have accidentally met somebody in the past and are going to accidentally meet up with her again in this century?" said Freddy, as he placed his hands behind his head and leaned back into the chair. Jamie looked at his friend inquisitively and said, "You have a strange way of looking at things, Freddy Chambers, and how do you know of my plans regarding Laura Dinsdale?" "There you go. Just like I said to your sister, you're a hypocrite. After all that you said to me about Alice when you got back last time." "It's not hypocrisy as such. Well, it kinda is, but you of all people must know that this is something primeval, and you just can't fight it." "Yeah, I do, and that's what I was trying to explain to you back then." "Well, I totally understand it now. As you say, this is all beyond our thinking, and it might not work for me like it worked for you. Unlike you, I replaced the man who was with Laura in the 16th century, so it wasn't actually me she fell in love with. I was made to look like the person she was already in love with, so she might not recognize me at all. I almost phoned her. Well, I did phone. I actually did, but thankfully she was engaged. Why thankfully? Because when I put the phone down, I realized that I would not have known what to say. What could I say? Oh, hi, Laura. We met in the 16th century. Then your grandson told me all about you in the 17th century. I wondered, maybe, do you fancy a coffee and a catch-up? I see what you mean, said Freddy. I have some serious thinking to do, and now that my sister's back, we have work to do on this beautiful mistress right here. Indeed we do. I have spent 2 weeks with not one bit of grease on my skin. Office work is not for me. As my good wife said, it's time for me to get back to my train set. Sounds good to me. As for your other problem, how's about something a little more straightforward and more 21st century? Why not casually meet her and strike up a conversation? That way she can get to know you, and maybe something will blossom from that. She now works for your sister, so use that as a starting point, said Freddy, as he took a slurp of tea. To be honest, Freddy, I think I will leave it for a while and concentrate on what I know best. After explaining it to you, I can see that I was wrong to think like that. Like I said, it wasn't me she fell in love with, so maybe in the future fate might play a hand, but until then, I think I will back down. The door handle behind Jamie rattled as the lever was depressed. There was a tap on the door as it opened. Fate can be a funny thing, said Freddy as he looked at the woman who had just walked in. The woman was none other than Laura Dinsdale. Mr. Chambers, I was told I would find you here. May I have a word, please? Jamie froze to his seat when he heard Laura's voice. He looked straight at Freddy as his eyes widened. Freddy gave Jamie a wink, and then to Laura said, I told you to call me Freddy. Now, what brings you here? I need to know if I have the authority to sign these and other such documents. Laura handed a manila folder to Freddy, and as she did, she recognized the person sitting opposite him as none other than the man in the photograph. And here he was, sitting in front of her. The man smiled a boyish, embarrassed smile. Laura smiled back and said, Hello. Jamie, trying hard to keep his cool, stood and introduced himself. Freddy, seizing the moment, stood and said, Let me go check with my wife. My phone's in the car. I won't be long. With that, Freddy left the building, leaving Laura and Jamie still shaking hands. You're Jamie Winters. I recognize you from the photograph back in the office. I would never have thought to find you wearing overalls and to be covered in oil. But find me you have. I don't have a head for commerce like my sister and parents. I am more a hands-on type of guy. Jamie cringed as that sentence left his lips. But to his surprise, Laura said, I'm rather like that myself. When you get some free time, you must come and join me. I could show you around my small railway empire, said Jamie, again not believing what he had just said. Laura looked all about her and said, I love old railways. I always have. I just might take you up on that, Mr. Winters. Oh, please, do call me Jamie. Mr. Winters sounds so official, and I am not the official type. Okay, Jamie, and I will take you up on that, but for now I must go and see Freddy, as I do have an awful lot to do. Laura bid Jamie good-bye and coolly walked outside. As she closed the door behind her, she felt her knees were about to give way. Her heart was pounding in her chest, and she couldn't for the life of her remember why she had gone there. She knew she must do something to see that man again. Freddy, who was not phoning anybody, saw Laura in her distress and walked over to her. "Are you okay, Laura? You look a bit peaky," said Freddy Chambers, recognizing the look of love. "I need to find out about trains, and very quickly." I think we have a timetable back at the office. You can take that if it will help," said an impish Freddy. "No, I need to know about steam engines and how they work." At that point, Freddy could have kept his silly banter up all day, but the poor girl was in enough distress. "You were just talking to the man who knows more about steam locomotives than Robert Jones and Lee Coates put together." "Who are they?" "They are the curators of the National Railway Museum in York and the Armley Mills Industrial Museum in Leeds, respectively. Together, they are the authority on all things train." "Wow, he really does know his stuff." "Yep, it's almost as if he was there at the birth of steam power," said Freddy, with a wry smile on his face. "The trouble is, it is him that I want to impress. Don't ask me why, because I don't know. When he looked up at me, something inside me stirred. The same thing happened when I looked at a photograph of him in the office. I'm not an adolescent girl having her first crush, but my God, it sure feels like it. What am I doing talking to you like this? I'm sorry. Please forgive me. I can't even remember why I came here." Don't worry about that. I know that feeling well. That's what it was like for Alice and me, so I do understand. If I could give you a little advice, it would be, just go about your daily life. I think you will find that your teenage crush will come and find you. I don't know what I mean. I've never felt like this. Please excuse me, Mr. Chambers. This is very unprofessional of me, and I do apologize," said Laura, as she turned and very quickly walked away. Freddy opened the door and walked back inside to Jamie. He was laughing to himself as he got to the table where Jamie still sat. "What on earth did you do to that poor girl?" said Freddy. "What do you mean? I was a perfect gentleman. The thing is, however, I may have blown it because of all things we talked about trains. The problem you witnessed must have been her nearly expiring of boredom. Not the impression I got, old boy. That girl seems to have it bad for you. So, it looks like the girl you met in the past was in love with you after all. Maybe that's why she didn't come back. Maybe things changed so that this could happen. Did I break her heart back in the 16th century? Have I caused her to be like this? Is my meddling with time—" "Stop right there. You did not choose to go back, and everything that happened back there happened because somebody wanted it to. Overanalyzing this will drive you mad. Here's the girl that you have been looking for since you arrived back. She has just walked into your life of her own free will and is totally infatuated with you. Now, It seems to me you can do one of two things. You can carry on in this frame of mind, which won't help either of you, or you can sit back and thank your lucky stars that you are Jamie Winters and you are about to find the love of your life. It's all down to you, interrupted Freddy. Freddy, you're absolutely right. I think flowers and boxes of chocolates are in order. That's very nice of you, old boy, but if I start receiving flowers and chocolates from people, Alice will start to become jealous. Get out, you silly fool. I'll be off then, and don't forget, you owe me one, laughed Freddy as he left the building. Jamie, still sitting at his bench, could not believe his luck. The awkwardness of finding a way to meet up with Laura Dinsdale was now gone. All he had to do was instigate the first meeting, and then hopefully fate would take over. Laura Dinsdale arrived back at her garden office. She opened the door quickly and ran inside. She sat down at her desk and placed her head in her hands. Tears welled up in her eyes, but at the same time she began to giggle. Never had a man affected her this way. She had had crushes. She had fallen in love. She had even been married. But she had never felt the feeling she was feeling at this point in her life. She wondered how this would pan out and how she could make Jamie Winters fall in love with her. Freddy arrived back at head office to find his wife Alice back behind her desk. It hadn't taken Alice long to get back into the swing of things as she looked through the folio of the new premises she had acquired. She was glad that she didn't have to concentrate on the estate agents and the builders, because she knew as well as the day-to-day running of the company that would be too much for her. She was looking forward to meeting Laura Dinsdale again. It had been quite a while since she had seen her. It would have been 10 years, and had it not been an alternate future for Alice, Laura would definitely not be looking forward to the meeting. In fact, she wouldn't have accepted the post at all. The good thing about Alice's alternate future was that it changed everyone's perception of her and eradicated the old Alicia from their collective memory. "When have you arranged for Laura to come and see me?" questioned Alice. "It was supposed to be this afternoon, but I fear she has come down with quite a fever," said Freddy. "I wonder what brought that on." "Your brother. And someone had told Laura that I would be with your brother. She was also given instructions on where said brother would be. I have no idea where she obtained the information, nor why she came to see me while I was there, as she gave me an empty manila folder. I suppose it's just one of those strange things that happens." Alice coughed and fumbled about with her papers, then said, "I'm sure I have no idea, but all's well that ends well, as they say." I suppose you're right," said Freddy, raising an eyebrow. "Of course I am, dear. I'm always right. Now, shall we go have some lunch and to catch up, as I'm dying to know the ins and outs of all this?" said Alice, quickly changing the subject. "Now you're talking. I'm starving. I will enjoy my resignation lunch, especially when the boss is paying," said Freddy, reaching for his jacket. "I never mentioned that I'd be paying. Have you any idea how much I have spent over the last 2 weeks? I think I need to reduce my spending, and I can do that right away by allowing you to buy me lunch. Now, doesn't that show how committed I am to saving money, my darling?" "You seem very committed to saving your money at the expense of mine. Still, I suppose you are worth it, as I should have quite a wage packet to pick up." My darling, you have just worked the last 2 weeks for the love of your wife. I don't recall any negotiations about money. If you had wanted monetary reward, you should have said so, but I fear you did not, so I will repay you in kind, said Alice, as she planted a kiss on his cheek. I have been hoodwinked again, and I'm buying lunch. I thought your kind was the fairer sex. Clearly a different meaning, the word fairer, said Freddy, as he accepted the kiss on his cheek, but was looking forward to the bonus later. Laura could not sit at her desk any longer. She had sat there for the past hour, trying to get her brain to concentrate on something other than Jamie Winters. She put on her jacket and left the office. She walked the short distance to town and made her way to a cafe. It was a cafe that had been there for a long time, and its fascia resembled that of the old Tudor building in the next street. She went inside and ordered a strong black coffee, taking a seat next to the wall. As her coffee was brought to her, she couldn't help but notice a rather elegant couple sitting by the window. The man looked unusual. He had a tall frame, but slender build. He wore black clothing, the kind of clothing that is normally associated with the Gothic community. It was the lady that he was sitting with who first caught Laura's eye. She was a rather elegant lady, with the kind of grace that you don't see in the times Laura lived in. Laura couldn't help but gaze at the vision of beauty sitting in front of her. She had never seen her before, or the man for that matter, but while she sat there, her head had cleared, and for the moment Jamie had disappeared from her mind. For the very first time in her life, Laura was looking at another woman in a completely new way. It didn't take long for the rather astute lady, gracefully sipping her tea, to know that she had attracted someone's attention. As she took the last sip of her beverage, she replaced the cup onto the saucer. Laura couldn't help but notice that not one trace of lipstick had transferred to the cup. Laura looked at her own cup, and like every other woman who wore lipstick, there was a perfect shape of her lips on the rim. It was at that point the vision of feminine beauty turned and looked towards Laura. Laura immediately looked away as the elegant woman walked towards her. The woman simply took a business card from her handbag and placed it on the table at the side of Laura's cup. She then placed a hand on top of Laura's and gave a gentle squeeze. The elegant lady smiled, then turned to rejoin the gentleman as they left the cafe. The strangest feeling that Laura had ever felt came over her. Again, her heart was pounding. What a day this was turning out to be. After several years of thinking passion was dead, in one day that feeling had been turned on its head. As she began to calm down, she picked up the small business card that had been left, and on it was simply the lady's name, Tamara Stapleton. On the reverse of the card were 3 other names, Atkinson, Dewhurst, and Smith, followed by a telephone number. Laura quickly placed the card in her purse, drank up her beverage, and left the cafe. Looking at her watch, she saw the day had moved on, and it wouldn't be long before her kids would be home from school. So she tried to clear her head of both Jamie and the elegant lady she had just witnessed, and made her way back home and to motherhood.